Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea confirms a 7th case of African swine fever, a highly contagious disease that's deadly to pigs. Humans are safe, but the authorities have stopped all movement to and from pig farms as they try and stop it from spreading. The United States and Japan sign a trade deal that'll open the Japanese market to more American farm goods, beef, pork, and much more. Japan will get lower tariffs on manufactured goods. And South Korean consumers apparently feeling better about the economy. Sentiment is up for the first time in 4 months, apparently due to a rising stock market and government stimulus. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning into our afternoon newscast. I'm Devin Whiting. We start with the latest on the outbreak in South Korea of African swine fever. It continues to spread in the northern parts of the country near the DMZ. It's not harmful to humans, but it's fatal to pigs, and another case was confirmed today, bringing the total to 7. Our Kim Jae-hee joins us now from Seongmo-do Island on the west coast, near the site of the 7th confirmed case. So Jae-hee, what's the latest?
Hi, Devin. I'm near the farm in Seoul-do Island in Kang County, where the 7th case of the African swine fever was confirmed earlier today. Now, this farm had been previously shut down and had only 2 pigs when the infection was confirmed, which raises questions about how the disease found its way here. Inspections are underway right now for at least 3 other suspected cases.
Well, Jae-hee, the top priority, of course, is to stop the disease from spreading. It's highly contagious among pigs and could potentially put a big dent in pork supplies. What measures are in place at the moment?
A nationwide standstill on all pig farms, feed factories, and slaughterhouses was supposed to be lifted as of 12 p.m. today, but has been extended for another 48 hours. Now, the entire province of Gyeonggi-do is under quarantine, as the city of Incheon and Gangwon-do province. The authorities are also currently inspecting pig farms and livestock-related facilities in 154 cities and counties as they prepare to disinfect them. Since the first case was confirmed last week, the total number of pigs that will have to be put down has now reached nearly 60,000. Incheon also said it will cull all pigs within 3 kilometers of the farms confirmed of the fever, which is 1/5 of all the pigs in Incheon. Gyeonggi-do is also planning to implement 6 key countermeasures, such as installing more quarantine control posts and requesting cooperation from local military units. The Blue House has also launched a task force to get the latest information on the fever from agencies and come up with swift response measures. It's not clear how the disease entered South Korea, but North Korea reported its own outbreak back in May, so authorities are inspecting inter-Korean waterways. That is all I have for now, Devin. Back to you.
All right, Kim Jae-hee reporting there. Thank you for that. Now, the South Korean presidential office is suggesting that there's a strong chance that North Korea's Kim Jong-un might make an unprecedented visit to the South in November for an ASEAN forum in Busan. The South Korean intelligence service said essentially the same thing a few days ago. That would likely depend, though, on the success of talks between the North and the U.S. Our Shin Se-min has this report.
South Korea's presidential office on the same page as the nation's intelligence agency that North Korea's Kim Jong-un may in fact visit South Korea for the ASEAN Special Summit in the port city of Busan in November. The backdrop of that, the ongoing discussions between North Korea and the U.S. and between the 2 Koreas, as well as the National Intelligence Service's claim this week that said the North's leader Kim Jong-un could cross the border again. The prospective nuclear talks between Pyongyang and Washington are feeding the presidential office's optimism, but there may need to be talks between the 2 Koreas in order to make that trip actually happen. Looking back at President Moon's brief trip to New York and meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, the presidential office reportedly sees the restarting of the Korean peace process as a major outcome.
제3차 북미 정상회담이 열린다면 아마도 한반도의 비핵화의 새로운 질서가 만들어지는 아주 세계사적인 대전환 이렇게 업적이 될 것이라고 믿습니다.
In addition, President Moon added to the peace blueprint during his keynote speech at the UN General Assembly with his plan to turn one of the most heavily guarded regions in the world into a global peace zone.
유엔과 모든 회원국들에게 한반도의 허리를 가로지르는
비무장지대를 국제평화지대로 만들자는 제안을 하고자 합니다.
One shortfall in what was generally seen as a fruitful trip was the lack of progress in relations with Japan. The presidential office reportedly said the ongoing under-the-table talks with Japan have yet to lead anywhere. So it looks like the embittered relations between the two neighbors won't go away for the time being. Changmin, Arirang News, New York.
South Korea and the U.S. start 2 days of biannual defense talks today on regional security and other pending alliance issues, including the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. Seoul's defense ministry says the 16th Korea-U.S. Integrated Defense Dialogue, or KIDD, is being headed by South Korea's Deputy Minister for National Defense Policy, Jung Seok-hwan, and his American counterpart, Haino Klink. During the previous round of talks in Washington in April, the two sides reaffirmed their alliance and said the inter-Korean military agreement signed last September has helped ease tensions on the peninsula. On the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York on Wednesday, South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang sat down with her Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. They discussed denuclearizing the Korean peninsula and continuing their work together so another round of North Korea-U.S. talks happens as soon as possible. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry says Wang shared the results of his visit earlier this month to Pyongyang. The two sides also agreed to bolster their bilateral ties, including more economic cooperation. They also exchanged views on the U.S. anti-missile system THAAD deployed in South Korea. The White House says President Trump and Prime Minister Abe of Japan in their summit discussed the importance of trilateral security cooperation between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington. They discussed a range of issues, it says, including Iran and North Korea. The U.S. had expressed concern and disappointment last month when Seoul decided to terminate its military intelligence sharing pact with Tokyo. South Korean lawmakers have begun a 4-day question and answer session this afternoon with top government officials. Over the 4 days, lawmakers will be quizzing officials on a range of topics from politics to diplomacy and economic issues. Today's session covers political matters. Taking center stage is newly appointed Justice Minister Cho Kuk, whose family is under investigation for suspicious investments in a private equity fund and for allegedly fabricating his daughter's academic records. The conservative opposition is claiming that Cho's ethical lapses show that he's not fit for the job, while the ruling party is defending him and questioning Cho about his ideas on the government's reform drive. Cho said that he will do his best to regain public trust and to carry out sweeping reforms of the prosecution and the Justice Ministry. The U.S. and Japan are locked in separate trade wars, but they've signed a new bilateral trade deal under which Japan will open its market to American agricultural goods worth billions of dollars. Kim Yo-sun reports.
Japan has agreed to open up its market to $7 billion worth of American agricultural products. U.S. President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced the initial details of an emerging trade deal between the two countries on Wednesday in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Explaining the Japanese tariffs will now be significantly lower or eliminated for U.S. products, President Trump stressed the deal will greatly help American farmers.
Under the market access agreement that we're announcing today, Japan will open new markets to approximately $7 billion in American agricultural products. Japanese tariffs will now be significantly lower or eliminated entirely for U.S. beef, pork, wheat, cheese, corn, wine, and so much more. This is a huge victory for America's farmers, ranchers, and growers, and that's very important to me.
Nearly 90% of U.S. food and agricultural products will receive duty-free or reduced tariff access to Japan, while many products that are gaining new access, including wine and cheese, will face tariffs that phase out over several years. Abe described the deal a win-win for both sides.
One of the highlights of this new agreement is that under this agreement, we together will be able to bring benefits to everyone in Japan as well as in the United States, namely consumers, producers, and workers.
Following the signing ceremony between the two leaders, the U.S. Trade Representative's office explained that automobiles were not included in the agreement, as Tokyo wanted further discussion on the matter. It also said a wide range of Japanese industrial goods, from machine tools to musical instruments, will see reduced or eliminated tariffs in the U.S. market. Kim Hyo-san, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Trump claims his administration might reach a trade deal with China sooner than expected. Speaking to reporters in New York on Wednesday, after signing the deal with Japan, Trump said Beijing very badly wants a deal, and the Chinese, he said, are already making big agricultural purchases from the U.S., including beef and pork. Over the past year, the world's two largest economies have imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of each other's goods. High-level trade talks are due to resume next month. It's time now for an in-depth look at the market action this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for making time today.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, it seems like the markets are hanging on every word from President Trump with the high-level trade talks coming up with China. Some think they might reach a deal sooner rather than later. This seems to be lifting sentiment. Wall Street was up overnight. Korean stocks started higher but ended flat. What's the story today?
Sure. As you said, there's a continuation of confusion regarding what's happening to the political front between U.S. and China. If you look at the dollar movement, it broadly have supported on Thursday and actually risen, appreciated against various other currencies, with the possibility that U.S. and China trade deal will actually be made sometime in October. Of course, there was a news about possibility of impeachment for Trump that has resulted into quite sharp decline the day before. But because of this positive news of the U.S.-China trade deal might happen, market recover quite significantly. If you look at the U.S. market, S&P was up about 0.6%, NASDAQ was up over 1%. But the European market in general was down because of the news that the concern about the political front. Also, the Chinese market seems to be taking quite a beating today. The Shanghai index was down more than 0.6%, and also the Shenzhen index is down 1.8%. So in general, still the political side is confusing, and we're not seeing the actual results yet, except maybe Japan. But in overall, everybody's very confused about what's happening in terms of the political issues and also the trade issues.
Yeah, staying with the political issues, President Trump now facing an impeachment inquiry. Obviously, if this gains serious traction, it would be a significant drain on sentiment. But how much of a factor do you think it is right now and going forward?
Well, as you said, the news of the possible impeachment process has resulted into a quite sharp drop of the U.S. market the day before. But yesterday it recovered. But in any case, the impeachment process seems to be started. Speaker Nancy Pelosi said on Tuesday that the United States House Representative would launch a formal impeachment inquiry against President Donald Trump in regards to the issues with the foreign powers. In any case, the actual possibility of impeachment is very low because you need a 2/3 vote to pass the actual impeachment. So the process might start, but actual results might not be coming through in real concern. But nevertheless, if this process starts, what that means is that Trump is going to be a bit more desperate in terms of trying to boost the economy. You need that to go through so that he can win the election process for next year. If he doesn't win the election, then after that, it could be a very, very negative news for himself. So therefore, he would do everything possible to win the election next year, which means that he has to settle some kind of trade deal with China. So we do think that a China trade deal will happen sometime in October. In terms of the size of that deal, we're not sure. But nevertheless, you need some kind of boosting measure in order to keep the economic growth rate above 2%.
Got it. Well, as we just heard, the U.S. and Japan have signed a trade deal, and Prime Minister Abe saying it's win-win, as we just heard. Do investors think this is a big deal? And for Korea, as a competitor of Japan in the U.S. market, what's the impact there?
Well, at least signing of any kind of trade talk deal is positive news, because you already know that the continuation of concern about the trade deal not happening between U.S. and China and Korea versus Japan, and also all these things were putting a dent to the equity market performances. But signing of any kind of deal between any major countries is positive news, and clearly this news of Japan and U.S. making the deal is positive. But nevertheless, in terms of who really wins out of this trade deal, we're not sure. I think that is probably a lot more favorable to U.S. rather than Japan. So in any case, in terms of looking at the various valuations and economic conditions of countries, we're not really in favor of Japan in terms of the growth rates or the equity market performances in the future. But in overall, we think that the process of the trade could accelerate a little bit further in the future rather than decelerating before, which could be positive news in general. In terms of whether Korea can achieve something similar with the U.S., we're not sure. But as you know, Korea have decided to purchase more of LNG and also spend more on defense budget. So all in all, I think various governments are spending more to boost the economy, so which is positive news.
All right, Mr. Yu, thank you very much for joining us today. We'll have to leave it there. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.
Now, South Korea's consumer sentiment rose in September after 4 straight months of decline. According to the Bank of Korea, the consumer sentiment index came to 96.9 for this month, up more than 4 points from August. The central bank attributed the rise to higher stock prices and the government's expansionary economic policies. But the figure is still below 100, meaning there are more pessimists than optimists about the local economy. South Korea's LG Electronics is apparently America's favorite appliance maker based on customer satisfaction. LG has topped the U.S. Household Appliance and Electronics Report for this year, getting a score of 82 out of 100. Published by the American Customer Satisfaction Index, the report measures customer satisfaction with over 400 companies by interviewing roughly 300,000 American consumers every year. LG not only maintained a stable score from last year, but was also highly praised for its line of refrigerators. With a score of 80, Samsung Electronics was in second, tied with Germany's Bosch and U.S. manufacturer Whirlpool. Now, there are cultural events lined up all over Korea now that the weather's cooling off. One of them is way down south in the beautiful Suncheon Bay, the Suncheonman International Orchestra Festival. 5 concerts in total through next Monday. Our Lee Min-sun went to the first one and filed this report.
The 2019 Suncheonman International Orchestra Festival kicked off on Wednesday night in Suncheon Bay in South Korea's Jeollanam-do province. Now in its 4th year, the festival presents a series of classical music performances by some 400 musicians and 5 orchestras from around the world. The opening concert was presented by South Korean maestro Changmin and pianist Im Dong-hyuk, playing globally loved pieces by Tchaikovsky and Beethoven.
And that this beautiful park with a wonderful setting that opens the possibility for us classical musicians to play for a wider audience. And so we are basically messengers of music, and so we are very happy when we are able to especially play for people who would normally not be able to go to concerts.
Local residents and visitors from across the country filled up some 3,000 seats, most of which were laid on free of charge. To make the festival appealing to those unfamiliar with classical music, the performances include well-known tunes that have appeared in movies and on TV. The concerts are held in an outdoor garden surrounded by flowers, trees, and water. The Suncheon Bay National Garden, where the stage has been set up for the concert, is one of the 5 biggest wetlands in the world and is a popular tourist destination in South Korea, especially during the autumn season. The garden is 1.1 million square kilometers in size and contains various kinds of plants and trees arranged in unique garden styles from different countries.
Classical music festivals held in other cities are for classical music lovers. Classical music is typically considered difficult to access, so we made our program easier to enjoy without having any background knowledge. The concerts are also performed on an outdoor stage, so it's easier to access than those held at a formal concert hall.
The 6-day festival will present 5 performances in a bid to make classical music a pleasant addition to people's daily lives. 이민선, 아리랑 뉴스, 순천.
And another music festival kicking off today in Seoul. It's in Korea's home for youth culture, the university neighborhood of Hongdae. Won Jung-hwan reports.
Asia's trendiest indie music festival is now in town. Known as the Sundae Festa, the festival provides a platform for emerging artists from all over the world, playing a range of musical styles from rock to electronica. The annual event has gotten bigger every year since it began in 2012, and this year, more than 100 groups of musicians from 20 countries will perform to indie music lovers. The festival will take place simultaneously at several live clubs and concert halls around the Hongdae area. And this French musician who already performed in Busan a few days ago is looking forward to meeting Korean indie music lovers.
The first show that we played, the only show that we played, was really welcoming, and the energy that was given by the audience was really different from what we experience in France sometimes.
However, just performing in front of the audience is not the only reason these artists are here. Some musicians will be showcasing what they've got to music industry professionals to help them expand their career to other global markets.
A really interesting event because it's both a music market, like a buying and selling place, but also a really amazing music festival. Yeah, and I know a lot of the presenters that were here last year found some great talent. There's lots of tours, so hopefully that continues, and hopefully I can be a part of making something else happen.
The industry professionals who has taken 9 Korean artists and bands to perform in Australia over the past few years says he is always looking for someone unique and something cultural.
Trying to find something that feels unique, something that feels like you don't see it every day, something that gets crowd. I generally go for quite high energy stuff and stuff that gets a crowd going, but also something that feels uniquely Korean as well. Like there's
For the past few years, Sundae Festa has produced some up-and-coming music stars, and the platform gives many young musicians a chance to further their music careers. The global music festival runs until Sunday in the Hongdae area of Seoul. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
Korea's cultural centers, which teach locals about traditional culture, everything from music and art to cooking, have come together in downtown Seoul to show off the unique cultures of Korea's different regions. Our Kim Bo-kyung went to check it out.
25 cultural centers from Seoul and 22 centers from around the country gathered at Gwanghwamun Square on Wednesday to promote local folk cultures and traditional performances as part of the 2019 Seoul Cultural Center Expo. Dongnaegu Cultural Center from the port city Busan displayed its Dongnae crane dance. The dance portrays the elegant movements of the cranes that inhabit the area. Gohung Cultural Center from Jeollanam-do Province showed off its paper money dance. Recorded as one of Korean intangible cultural assets, this dance is usually seen in Korea's southwestern Honam region. Shamans in the region would dance with dozens of pieces of paper while praying for the dead to rest in peace. And a team from Sunchang, Jeollabuk-do Province, performed the marching song Okcheon Village Daechita.
Okcheon Village Daechita uses Korean wind and string instruments, and this marching song usually led the King's Parade in the past. The audience could find it meaningful to see how the old custom of the Goryeo dynasty is reproduced.
There were also plenty of activities for visitors to get involved in, such as making lucky bags used on Seollal, the Lunar New Year, or making shoes out of hanji, a type of traditional Korean paper. There was also a center where calligraphers write quotations of people who fought for Korean independence. As well as attracting locals, the festival gave foreigners a chance to see less well-publicized aspects of traditional Korean culture.
It's interesting because all of these shamanistic rituals and shamanistic culture, which you do not find in Asian countries anymore today. And as a Western guy, I do not even know that it exists or existed.
People could also take part in traditional Korean folk games or playing a traditional Korean drum.
These performances give people a taste of different cultural traditions of each corner of the country and will perhaps inspire them to take a trip and explore new parts of Korea. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.
"2019 has been a